Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are live right now on the CannaBuzz community, and you are watching the CannaBuzz podcast. We are super stoked to be back with you. It's April already. The year is trucking along, and we've got a great guest for you today. It's Aaron Getty. We're going to get into his story and all about him in just a moment, but I've got a few shout outs that I need to make just at the top of the show. So, first off, shout out to everyone in the CannaBuzz community. Like I mentioned there just a second ago, we're live streaming this to our CannaBuzz community. It's our own little community. It's kind of like a Patreon plus a social network. So check it out. Search CannaBuzz in the App Store or go to cannabuzz.app on the web and use the code GROWERSLOVE for 50% off. We'd really appreciate your support. It helps us keep things going. Also, need to shout out a couple sponsors, supporters of the show. So I want to shout out Terploc Grove Bags. Oh, I've got all kinds of Grove bag sizes, and you use these bags to cure your weed. So this is their glass jar bag that you can use to cure your weed, and it's you can just replace a jar with a bag. It's a great really great technology that JR and I both have been using in the past several months and been super happy with it. So make sure to go to grovebags.com and use the code CANNABUZZ for 7% off. And then we want to shout out our man Tiki at TikiMadMan.com. Right, JR, Tiki's got, what's his promo that he's got going on right now?
Right now, he's doing all of his Gary Satan cross fem line that he's doing. So he's got Gary Payton by Jealousy, Zope, Super Boo, Face Off. There's like I'd say about 15 different varieties that he did in this line, and they're all bangers. So there's a lot of different stuff there. It was the Gary Payton by Jealousy was a Clearwater collab that he did. So he's got a lot of really good gear coming out, and you can do all your pre-orders on 420 at tikiseeds.com.
Nice. So, and we'll also, one of the perks for our members that are in the live streams, we're going to be giving away a pack of seeds. It's going to be from Raw Genetics. So we'll be giving that away to one of our live chatters at the end of the show. But let's get into it. Our guest today is Aaron Getty. Aaron Getty is from the Southern Oregon Legacy Cannabis community, and he's here to shed light on the systemic removal of legacy growers in Southern Oregon. Aaron is organizing a co-op of farmers, and we'll be discussing some of those changes and what's going on in the industry and the community, everything that's happening down where he's at. So let's get into it. Welcome to the show, everyone. We've got Aaron Getty. Welcome.
What's up? Thanks for having me, everybody. Thank you guys for having me, give me the opportunity to speak to you guys and give you a little insight in the Southern Oregon cannabis community here. It's another crazy year. Looking out here out my front on my yard. That's one of the grows there. It's a tier 2, so it's a full acre. We have a 140-acre private lake over there, but the weather's still raining.
Yeah.
It's a way long spring, still cold, and interesting year. Before I won't go too much into like some of like where my started, my history or whatnot, I want to give a shout out to Grow Bags because I know the Grove technology quite a bit. You know, they have this like automatic humidity control that's like worked into the bags, and like we use like the commercial sized ones, and it like just kind of helps to prevent any errors because there's just so much to do in the legalized framework that the more systems you have in place to mitigate your risk and exposure to mistakes is advantageous. And then also, if I don't know the guy that's doing the seeds, but I'm a big fan of feminized seeds when it comes to production, just because of the likelihood of males, and pollen just really makes it really difficult to really grow photoperiod regular sex seeds where you have males and female. Right. So most of our people that I see growing regular sex seeds are really doing like a 10% of their canopy as like a pheno hunt. And then once they pheno hunt, they get the final product. you know, at the very end, when it's dried and cured, then you can put together all your notes and you can find out, well, let's keep this pheno, let's get rid of this pheno, because there's so many different ways that you judge a good strain, like clonability. Like it could be a dumper, it could be super terpy, it could be a great THC result, but what if it doesn't clone very well? Which is an interesting thing. Make sure to ask me a little bit more about cloning. I have a pretty cool insight into that I've learned recently. But if you don't mind, I'll go a little bit into like kind of my story and how I started. So I graduated high school, first one in my class, high school class, to get my own house. So naturally I started a McDonald's drive-through window for weed when I was 18 years old. I'm a first generation, you know, cannabis guy. So my parents are on the medical field. So I was kind of like upper middle class selling weed. So I like had to learn the two personality type scenario, like, you know, man of mystery, keep things hidden on this side, but yet, so my perspective as far as when we talk about gentrification, I just want to give a little clarity into that. You know, I mean, the real people that have a good understanding of gentrification are the people that are multi-generational cannabis farmers that have been producing in the industry, you know, before I was alive, and then here to this time where they see the commercialization and regulation of this industry. But I do think I can shed some insight and into what they've been through just because of the path that I've taken. Because I was or am a first generation farmer, you know, went to business school, and you know, I saw these older timers and also big timers that I wasn't going to be able to compete against necessarily. So I always sought to position myself as a service provider to those that have much more legacy and much more experience to draw from than my own. I thought I could bring my own skill set to what they already understood. So I'll bring that kind of into my story a little bit later. So back to when I was 18, I had a McDonald's drive-through, Southern Oregon. It was all pretty tight back then. Didn't know where to get weed. Little did I know that Southern Oregon was a hot spot to get weed, but it was still pretty not normalized back then. It was all done way up in the bush. People weren't out about it. And so naturally, where did I go where people were out with it? NorCal. You know, I went to Eureka first, and I ended up eventually going down to Willits, and met some really solid people, have still relationships with those people still to this day, and would bring packs up to Oregon and distribute to my little group of people. And, you know, I knew that that was, you know, a hustle, it was a side hustle. So I was, you know, keeping in mind, you know, what am I doing? I'm really passionate about international business and getting beyond this phase that I was in, which was making the money and looking to what my next move was. Part of it is decreasing your risk and your risk exposure. So early on, 18 years old, I got a medical marijuana card. For each medical marijuana card I had, I could have 1.5 pounds legally on me. So that was a pretty good hedge against risk that I would be taking while running around town, hooking him up, doing this. And that ended up paying off pretty good one time because my backpack fell out the backside of my truck, and some old couple found it, turned it into the cops. Cops called my dad, told my dad that, you know, your son's in big trouble, you know, and next thing you know, they call me up and they're like, hey, we found your backpack. And I was elated. I was so happy. I was like, yo, man, so stoked. And they're like, yeah, but this is full of illicit drugs.
Huh.
I was like, well, did you notice the binder of paperwork that were in there with it? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, how'd you know it was my backpack? You know, like, and so that binder was all my medical marijuana patient information, my own, and all the different caregivers and stuff I was with. And they asked me like, well, is it current? Is it legal? And I was like, what? You can't read? You know, I was just, you guys are like, come on. And so like, all right, well, if it's legal, then come on down the police station and pick it up. And so, you know, I was like, all right, I'll be right there. And so I got my girlfriend and her friend to come with me. And like, you know, I was like, told them, I was like, if I'm going down, we're going to do this in style. So I like walked up to the courthouse with a girl around each one of my arms. They both walked up the courthouse doors, opened up both the doors like this. And I come stomping through there and be like, hey, I'm here to pick up my illicit drugs. And they they were taken back, you know, like this is a small city. And so they thought for sure that they were going to rustle some feathers, you know, getting the doctor's kid in trouble and this and that. And, you know, I just got all my stuff back in evidence bags, proved it was all legit medicine, this, that. And I walked right out of there and with a story to tell. And, you know, through the years in those, you know, that framework or that structure or lack of framework and structure, there's lots of stories, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's, some of them are good, some of them are bad, but it created that, history and that like foundation to my character.
Yeah.
Being a first generation, you know, I didn't have that upbringing with my parents. I always had to hide it from them, you know, and that, you know, now that my dad knew, because my dad didn't know up until that point, he told me, he's like, well, I'm not paying for your college anymore. And so I had to get loans to finish college off. And I was in the business administration school at U of O. I focused in entrepreneurship. I did my like skill. I didn't play music or like, you know, I hurt myself so many times in sports and dirt bikes that I wasn't really competitive in that nature. So I got really into the entrepreneurship program I was in, and I did venture capital, business plan, presentation, competitions, and really sought a little niche in public speaking and associate that to, you know, starting new ventures. So, you know, when I graduated from U of O, I never really thought that I would be able to own that career or that profession. And so around that time, that was 2011. So from 2012 to 2015, the medical marijuana program around Oregon was doing pretty good. The dispensaries specifically were, you know, buying your product, buying your excess from you. So I, you know, wanted to hedge my risks and be involved in doing it in a, you know, career path way. I didn't really think it was something I could do forever. Like I didn't think it came with a retirement plan, but I, you know, wanted to at least do what I could within the state. So I moved all my product through the dispensaries, made a pretty good network. I started helping my friends do theirs. And so, you know, for a little while there, we had like a distribution company where we're medically moving patients' product through dispensaries around the state. That kind of gave me my first foot in the door and insight into how the distributing your product amongst dispensaries works. And then recreational went legal in 2016. And in 2015, 2016, it was like legalized. And so like end of 2015, it's like, whoa, this is going to happen. And like the day it went legal, I was like, all right, well, this is what I'm doing. You know, like it was really exciting for me to think about owning this as a profession and to become a specialist in something. And so I got into this business venture with this guy that was out of state, thought he had a lot of money, and he had a killer piece of property, and it was better for me to team up with him and manage production. But that venture was a not good partnership. The guy I was introduced, you know, my parents are pretty straight. I'm pretty straight too, really. But I was introduced to what addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction looks like, and how like traumatic those experiences can be when you're trying to work a venture with somebody that's any type of abuse, whether that's a physical or emotional or mental abuse. And I'm vested in a venture, and my reputation is important to me. I'm in a small town, so I had to see through that venture, but I realized that this was not going to become a legal recreational grow. And my first year in this new industry, and I'm going bust. And it's like, it felt really shitty. And like in the times of lows, and was when you really have the opportunity for the most amount of growth. And during that time is when I started 2 new ventures that really changed the direction and where I was going the next couple years. So specifically, one thing was I needed to meet people. I needed to meet the right people. And because it was like a green rush, tons of people coming here. And, and so I started this thing that I kind of took a lesson from my business school program. And I started like a chamber of commerce for cannabis. It was called the Cannabis Commerce Mixer. Specifically, it was the Southern Oregon Cannabis Commerce Mixer. And we've met the first Monday of every month for 4.5 years straight, every month. And no other group in Oregon could say that they did that. There was this other group called the Oregon Sun Growers Guild, and they were pretty well known, but they didn't meet every single month. When that time, that month where the meeting came around to Thanksgiving or Christmas or Halloween,
Right.
or New Year, or, during that time, it was really tough, but I always wanted to have it. And so it was 4.5 years. Every month I would have at least a speaker, if not 2 speakers, come down and talk about, the year and cycle. We had different like subjects that we'd always hit the same time the year. So like, planting season, we would be talking about planting. We'd be talking about soil culture. And then like harvest season, we'd be talking about extracts. We'd be talking about technology, this, technology, that. But what was really unique about my commerce mixer is that I would let at least 15 people introduce themselves from the audience, which a lot of these mixers and meetings, people had to pay to be sponsors to introduce themselves. And I didn't do that. Like, it was like $10 to come to the mixer, and I was able to cover my costs with, barely cover my costs, but, I was able to at least enjoy the philanthropic gesture for the community. At the same, I created that scenario for myself. So I wanted to create something for myself that I also could offer to the community. And so the opportunity, I wanted to introduce myself to the local cannabis community and let them know who I was and what I was doing. And I also shared that same opportunity with pretty much anybody in the audience that wanted to do the same. And I told people every month, I was like, do it every month. Like, if there's not enough people and we have enough time, get up there and say it again. Because I reiterate how important it is for people to own language and refine speech, because this was a new emerging industry. This was a chance for people to own a profession, which in the past they were in the dark about. So it was a really exciting time. A lot of exciting stuff happened during those 4.5 years. And that mixer put me as a go-to guy for Josephine County. And I met some key people. And if it wasn't for me doing that, my life would not be where it's at today. I'm not sure where I'd be, but I can tell you what, doing that changed my life. It changed my trajectory. Not only that, but being a service to the local community and economy. I saw that as an opportunity to build legacy. As you guys probably know, as men, it's important to have legacy and to build purpose. And that was a big part of mine. Outside of the service it generated for myself and me sharing that with others. And so I said that I did 2 ventures. That was one of them. The other venture is a really interesting one, and that will give you some idea of the character and person I am. So I told you earlier that I'm a first generation farmer. My family's from the medical field, and I learned a lot from my dad. My dad's a doctor. Specifically, he's a pecker checker. So another way you could say it, he's a cock doc. Another way you could
Okay.
say it is he's a penis genius.
Okay.
Nice.
So he's
Nice.
what you call a urologist, right? So like
Okay.
for like guys, he's like the gynecologist for guys. But he's also a urinary tract doctor. And he always used to tell me, he's like, Aaron, do what you love and you'll love what you do. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, Dad, you live this all day, I'm like, just I didn't tell him anything of that, but I'm just like scratching my head for years trying to figure this one out. But part of what I learned through that, I got the opportunity to fulfill in that second venture I mentioned. And I learned through my dad doing that as work, I learned that you don't have to do the glorifying job to become a specialist and become recognized in an industry. And so what did I do? I decided to start a cannabis stud service. And I focused
Okay.
my efforts in propagating males for pollen. And I did this by the thousands. Like I put out this model where I reached out to the community. I said, hey, everybody, you guys have any males? Give them to me. And if those plants make it through my production protocol, I'll give you a pollen credit in return. So I essentially cultivated people's males for them for free. And then I brought to market 5 years in a row, over 100 types of pollen each year.
Wow.
And I banked it. I learned how to not just cultivate and like catch pollen, but sift it, clean it, store it, package it, distribute it. Facebook seed trading was huge back then. And so I was big into Facebook seed trading, of course, because I was making seeds whoa, yeah, right. But I was also facilitating the creation of seeds on a whole nother level. And so, let's say you had a pollen credit with me, right? And so like I give you this long list of stuff, both last year, this year, and you're like, well, the one I gave you, not as cool as that one. I want some of that and some of that. And you're like, well, what about some more? So JR, let's say you didn't have any pollen credits with me. Well, beyond the pollen credit I got with you, Q, I still would offer the same thing to both of you. I'll offer you as much pollen as you can make seeds with for 40% of the seeds you make.
Okay.
So when Facebook seed trading was huge, I was on Facebook seed trading, not only trading seeds, but I was pushing pollen all over the world. And back then it wasn't like you could just ship stuff legally, but I figured pollen doesn't have THC. It's just germplasm. Fuck it. Let's go for it. And at the same time, hemp was like legalizing at that time. And I was like, fuck it, 1,000 plants, it's hemp, like, what are they going to do? Like, take me to jail? Fuck it, let's grow it, And so I just worked really hard in trying to understand how to qualify a male. And people, understand the female side. And so that it was my opportunity not just to sexually fulfill female resin glands, which is like a personal projection of myself that I was able to embody through my profession, but it was also an opportunity for me to learn how a male works and how to become a specialist in a completely not really understood or at least shared understanding or knowledge.
Right.
And
Like
then
a specialization. Yeah.
yeah. So that that kind of shifted over time. Like through that venture, I ended up creating like 400 pounds of seeds, almost, thousands of packages that I'd all brought into Metric when I finally got in the right position where I could become a partner and manage a rec grow. And through that management of the rec grow, I was able to bring in my seeds through a 90-day immaculate conception window. And so they're not only all the seeds I helped make and all the seeds I traded, But I also have been buying breeder packs for years. Like my breeder pack collection is just insane. And, the first year managing this rec row, that was a connection I made because of my repertoire associated to the cannabis commerce mixer, right? So the cannabis stud service and the commerce mixer put me in a position where I offered a unique service and a skill set to help people. And there was one person in particular that was starting a rec row. He was a doctor out of the Bay, and he wouldn't live there, and he invested his confidence in someone to manage a grow, and it was not good. When like I showed up, he was like, "Hey bro, can you save me?" And I was like, "There's no saving you." He has like 1,000 plants that were going into pre-flower. They were like 5 feet
no.
tall, still in 1 gallon pots.
Oh no.
Like, I mean, there's nothing you can do, except I run a cannabis stud service. So we could make a whole bunch of new seed varieties. And he's like, screw it, let's do it. So out of those 1,000 plants, all in 1 gallon pots, 5 feet tall, just packed together. So it's just one little bud off the top. We ended up making 800,000 seeds, and way over 150 different types.
So who's buying all this stuff? And I guess what we talk about on a lot of our shows when we talk to breeders and stuff like that, we talk about quality. If you're just like showing up at this dude's place with 1,000 like kind of sick plants or whatever, and you made a shit ton of seeds, are those seeds any good? Like I guess how did that all weigh into it, or did it not really matter at that point? It was just like, I got to make some money or whatever and get seeds out the
Everything,
door.
everything you said has some context to it, right?
Right, right,
So you got to make the most of what you have,
right.
right? So like there's an element to that. Well, let's do the best we can to create something of substance
Totally.
out of the situation that's just
Yeah.
bad.
Exactly.
But another part to the whole stud service is qualifying males, is understanding what makes a good male, what makes a good breeding partnership, what makes a good female to breed to, what makes a good seed. So not only did I do the stud service, I was one of the first people I knew to get a winnowing machine, which is what separates the chaff from the seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vacuum
Right.
thing. So next thing you know, I'm going through like 20,000 seeds in like a day, 50,000 seeds in a day by paying someone $15 an hour. I'm like stacking,
Yeah.
I
But
have a question. I have a question now with you producing seeds. Are your clients kind of other large growers that need large? Are you doing like 10 packs and shoving 10 packs out the door?
haven't sold any seeds in a long ass time. And actually that 400 pounds of seeds, never even really tried to sell them. So my goal with that was to create a bank of seeds that captured a genetic picture of what the local terroir of genetics at that time represented. And so that was like my first hustle, is like to understand, qualify the male, qualify the female, and thus create a value a perceived value associated to the seed I made. And then I also, because of the winnower, I got involved into helping to separate seeds from chaff of other people that accidentally or purposely made seeds. So I did a lot of just seed separating from people that like, yeah, I have a seeded crop, It's like, well, you're just going to extract it. Let me like pull the seeds from you, and then I'll split the seeds pull out, and I'll give you all your chaff back. Well, so that was like a venture where I really learned to understand like, well, not, I didn't learn it, I already understood all this, but like I would go through and I would like see these different situations that in that farmer's mind are a loss, complete loss. And I would see like, okay, so what happened? Oh, well, this female all of a sudden threw herm batches. I was like, all right, see ya. And that was like, whenever I heard of hermaphrodite made seeds, I was like, sorry, I can't really help you. But when I found, I had this one male and it didn't catch it and it came up as this. And I was like, okay, Well, that's at least something. It's not great to have a male come up late, because what you're doing is you're perpetuating a tendency of male genetics to show their sex late, which is
Right.
a way a plant tricks its us, the people that have been cultivating it for so long, to keep it around. You don't want that trait inherently in your genetics. You want a very loud and easily sexable male, so that when you breed that male into your lines, your people that are buying your seeds, 10 packs or even thousands for a commercial site, don't have these propensities that negatively affect an outcome. So um, I, the first year managing the grow here, we did a bunch of seed plants. And there was one seed variety that I made from, man, what's his name? Anyway, he was a guy that bred landrace genetics. He like got landrace genetics from all over the world.
Todd McCormick.
No, not McCormick. I
Or
forget his name.
Bodie, maybe.
No, not Bodie. No, I like Bodie a lot. My story about this guy isn't good, like he didn't do the
Okay,
job as
we'll
far
skip
as
that story.
like hunting out the hermaphrodism tendency. And so that year, one of the landrace varieties I bred to um, through a herm branch, and here we are dealing with herm flowers and seeds the first year that I'm involved in managing a rec operation. That was bad news. So like I've really shifted away from growing seeds altogether, just because of there's two tier 2 grows here, so 2 acres here, and we like to plant lots of little plants, not less big plants, because then you're harvesting on ladders and you need twice the T-posts and 2x4s and netting, and the wind blows them all around. Like we want them like, if you can reach, like that's as tall as we want. And so we tend to go lots of little plants. And so I've done lots of different seed production runs, but I really have worked to narrow down my production that is based on pheno hunted clone production. That way you have sizable, consistent flower that can easily be test batched, that can all be compliance tested. It can all be put through grading, which is literally a third party that comes in and evaluates and gives a score to your product. So that way, when you show up to a dispensary and you're like, look, so and so that does this for a living says that my weed is this number in a 1 to 100 scale, and it tests at this number. And not only does the grading give them an idea of like what the product is, it gives them an idea that all of it is consistently going to be this. And so that's it's tough for dispensaries to want to go back and buy from someone when the second pound they bought's not the same as the first pound they bought. And so like the consistency and all that is really where I've gone with clones. And we dedicate maybe like 10%. I don't have greenhouses here, so the idea of really utilizing the seed production, I've really just shifted completely away from the seed production bank that I've created, and really just honed in on the Sensimilla production of late, which is just more clone type production.
Yeah. So let's we kind of you took us on a journey there all over the place, and so I want to touch on let's see, let's talk about, well, we wanted to talk, you've been talking about Oregon. All of this has been taking place in Oregon, but we've been we wanted to connect with you and kind of get an idea of what it's like right now on the ground, so to speak. So yeah, let's start off with kind of talking about what it's like right now in the Southern Oregon communities, how people are being impacted. We've heard there is kind of like a loss of cannabis revenue in the community. Is that a thing? I also have been seeing people post lately on Instagram about pound prices are going up or something like that. I don't know if that's if people are seeing that at all, but yeah, just curious, like what's it like, and then how does that actually impact people, on the day to day or on the grounds, if you will.
Yeah, no problem. So first thing I'll say about the prices going up, I mean, like I love analogies. So like a couple years after the Great Depression, people were like, thank God, right? Because finally have some food on my table. Well, we're talking Great Depression, So like we feel like last year, the year before that was the Great Depression around here. Like you couldn't sell weed for, from the farmer for, you couldn't even get $200 a pound, trimmed, tested, ready to go. There was such an overproduction of, I like to say the open market and the regulated market. Open market being you don't listen to rules anyways, you just do whatever you want. The open market, cartels specifically came in here and just went bonkers. It
Can you
was
talk? Can you talk a little bit about some of the negative impacts that the cartels bring to our environment, to our communities when they come and set up? And I'm not just talking like, from what I understand, the cartels are not just Hispanic cartels. There's Russian cartels,
Chinese.
Asian cartels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty rampant down there. Can you talk about some of the negative impacts that brings to the community and the environment?
Yeah, well, I don't really like the label of cartel, right? So what is a cartel, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the truth of the matter is it's this organizations of people. It's not just, and even not organized people, even just local people, or even someone that moves here that's doing it on their own. All of that can have negative effects when people don't have as much care for the plant and the mission and the consumers. They don't care for the common law. Like a big thing around here is water. Water, groundwater specifically is a common good. It's like if I'm living up in the forest and my neighbor's growing, 100 plants, or 400 plants, that'd be big. Just where is it getting the water in the forest? They're sucking it out of the ground. What's that water being taken from? That water is being taken from our forest. Like it's been getting really hot up here.
Yeah.
Consistently over the last decade, and less water. And then a lot more marijuana has been growing, and people are just sucking water straight out of the ground. You wonder why there's forest fires. Like these trees don't have any other reserve of water than the ground. Pesticides is another big thing, where people don't understand what's going on in their soil or their plant, and they just need a fix it thing. It's just like Western medicine. They're like, I feel sick, let's do this. It's like, if you look at it functionally, what's going on, what habits are you doing, what's going wrong, what can you change to slowly, make yourself better? If you do a same type of integrated pest management system, then you won't likely ever have an infestation. And you do that in small changes from the very beginning. So I would say water is a huge thing that's not regulated with the open market grows, and pesticide use is another big thing. And there's simple things as like electricity. A lot of people are not, they're not doing permitted grows, so they're not going to permit their electricity, right? Because if they permit the electricity, then they're going to have to tell somebody that they're doing this.
Yeah.
They're not going to permit like places to go poop, so like people dig holes and just poop. People use these grow chemicals, which if you look on the label of a grow container, look what's in it. And then the honest truth is most of the stuff that's really bad isn't even on the label.
Yeah. Like a lot of the heavy metals and the toxic stuff that's in there isn't even on any kind of lists or readouts and testing or anything.
So like the rule supposedly is that if it's less than 2% of the product, it doesn't have to be on the label. Well,
yeah,
PGR is known as a plant growth regulator.
Yep.
That's what people have been smoking for a long time. And they're like,
Pack
the
low.
industry is going to look at, oh, this dense nug, this, that.
Yeah.
PGRs really affect the way that a bud looks and smells and yields. And the big reason why those nutrients work so well is because of the plant growth regulators, that all PGRs are basically illegal. And so you couldn't buy them legally in themselves.
Yeah.
Some of them are, some of them are, it could be like a natural variety. A lot of stuff is sourced naturally, but in the grand scheme of things, when you concentrate a PGR too much, it's not good for you. It's not good for the people consuming it. And so we got like nutrient waste, we got nutrient runoff, we got spraying pesticides, we got water use, we got illegal electrical dumping sites of trash. Trash is, or I poop earlier, but trash is another thing that's huge. Like these grows look like crap. People are out there to make money. So they're like taking from the environment and like polluting it all so they can get a buck. A lot of
Yeah.
these people are not buying a property, stewarding the property, and then living in harmony with it to generate a profit. Because if you generate some profit, you got to put some of that back in it and create this system. A lot of these people are creating like a rental scenario or a lease to own, and they're like taking as much as they can, and then they like pack it and they just try to go take that somewhere where it's worth more. So, not to say some people don't do it well, but a lot of people don't understand chemicals versus organic. And you know what? You can screw up organic almost worse than you can with chemicals. People don't really understand that, just because it's organic doesn't mean you can't poison the soil and make your plants basically not work and grow at all. So you have to really understand the science of both organic or inorganic and really do it in a way that, people are like, growers are pushing the plants, which is not what you want to do. I think that's why men don't make as good of growers as women, because women are much more intuitive. They listen. They are aware of what is going on in response to what their participation is. And so I think it's a really valuable lesson for men and women out there. Women, keep it up, and men, try not to push your agenda on the situation and try to listen to what it wants from you and what you could do to help.
I would
So
say that's really good relationship advice as well. You know what I mean?
yeah.
If you want to have, if you really want to have a good relationship, you really need to have that kind of, that kind of back and forth with each other, where you're kind of listening to each other and not maybe pushing your own agenda so much.
Right. Yeah, being a good listener. Well, we've got a few more questions because we're gonna run out of time here before we know it. The time has flown by on our time for our interview today. But we wanted to hit a few more questions. You mentioned earlier, I asked you about like what's it like in Oregon right now, and you mentioned that it was kind of like the depression and before, and maybe we're kind of getting out of it now. How are farmers kind of getting by? I know I live in California. I've seen the stories about how a lot of farms have ended up shutting down, unfortunately, or people are not renewing their licenses or whatever, just because it's been a tough time. But how are people kind of getting through it right now?
They're just sticking their nose down and working hard. It's harder than ever to generate a sale. We're in a state with how many million people live in Oregon?
Like 13. And most
13.
of them are, yeah, and I
Yeah,
think most of them are up here in Portland with me.
yeah. So we have 13 million people, right? And like there's really a plethora of supply. And so it's like it's really tough to drum up a sale. And like the process you have to go through to drum up a sale is not only you have to spend all the money up front, growing it, harvesting it, trimming it. You then have to go through a compliance test, which, man, this year has been a tough one for me personally, because it's the first time that I've failed for water activity, right? So there's all sorts of things that you can fail for that are really bad, like pesticides. We have new stuff like heavy metals. We have new testing like aspergillus. Luckily for me in this scenario, water testing is something that's very easy to remediate, which you just let the bag open, you let it dry out, and you go back again for retesting. Well, in this scenario, I actually shift our stuff up to a wholesaler, and it tested at 16% or no, 15.46% water activity, which the threshold for the state is 15% water activity. So, okay, so we have to go, it failed. We got our compliance. Everything is good except for a little too wet, which to me, that 15.5 was perfect. It was, everyone would enjoy smoking it the way it was. But according to Oregon, it's too wet. So, all right. So we go to get it retested. You know, it's another 3 weeks to get it all dried out. And then another test comes through. It comes back at 16%. Wait, how does it get wetter when it's in like a drying room? You know, like, and then the testing thresholds are like give or take 3%. It's like, what? And then all right, so let's do this again. Well, the guy that was managing the wholesale, his mom like has some health issues. And the next thing you know, 2 months goes by, you know? And so we finally got it retested and they dried it out too much. I mean, not too much. It's still good, but I think the water activity was like 9.5, which I like. I've seen my best stuff that comes out is always like close to the threshold. Like stuff that I think's perfect comes in about 13%. And so, you know, now it's at 9. All right. Well, the compliance test came back clean on everything. And our THC number was a 29.9. Mac Diesel. It's Miracle Alien Cookies times Oregon Sour Diesel. And it's an awesome strain. I love this strain. It's gassy, it's vigorous, heavy yield, easy to grow, and potent. And I really stopped smoking because this business almost failed last year. Like we couldn't sell any weed, and I wouldn't be okay with myself, this business failing and me being stoned all the time. So I had to stop smoking. And I've been 20 years every day doing it. So you know what? I'll take a little break and really appreciate a business that's kind of like, capitalize on this upswing. So yeah, prices are ticking up, but it's difficult to create a sale. It's not like you can sell a 50 pack. You literally to sell a couple pounds, you have to not only go through all that compliance stuff, you then have to call them all up and like convince them that your stuff is worth trying. And I mean, when you do sales, you don't want to convince them, but it's like this dance where you find the people are receptive to your mission, receptive to your vision and brand and your products. And so you finally get a couple people throughout the state that are interested in taking some samples. You can only hit maybe 5 dispensaries in a day max. That's like getting it right. So they're going to want, all right, well, I want a showing, and hey, I want a sample. And so like you go and show it to them. They're like, oh, it looks good. I'll let you know what it smokes like. Well, do they call you back? No, they get samples all the time. So you have to like follow up. You have to like really like lead into and like cater to these people. And when they're like, okay, I want a pound, when they buy that pound, you have to check in on them. You have to be like, all right, when do you want another one? You can't stop calling them. The second you stop calling them, they forget about you. You have to be that person in their mind that they think about when they want weed. But there's hundreds of thousands of people out there. So a brain can only really manage so many relationships in their brain. There's this rule of 150, right? Mm-hmm. Any one of us can only really manage up to 150 active relationships. So you have to, and they have family, they have friends. So you're not in a 150, you're more like in like 30 or 40 that, they're thinking about people to buy weed from. So you have to be that. And there's 400 and some dispensaries, how many dispensaries? Like a lot, like 700. It's a lot around state. So it's a lot of work. I'll just sell 1 pound,
And
like,
another thing I wanted to kind of mention and have you maybe speak about is really cannabis has a shelf life. And sometimes when you go into dispensaries, you'll see stuff on the shelf that may be a year old, or more, or sometimes even more I've seen. Can you kind of talk about the process of getting it cured, dried, ready for sale, and actually getting it on the shelf to the consumer where your brand and your reputation is going to be recognized?
Yeah, it's really tough. That's why I went for seeds, because seeds was way easier. Seeds keep, seeds aren't as volatile. Seeds don't have like this quality thing that you have to carry all the way through your production, through your packaging, through your distribution. And so when it comes to getting I've struggled to execute on sales on this grow year after year. And so when it comes to the most important factor for that would determine like whether we're being just treading water or being successful, I'd say it's like two things. One, establishing a brand and investing in that brand creation. But to be able to do that, you also need to have good product. In a couple years in a row, we've had seeds. It was a hard year to sell stuff. And then it's not like you have a plant at home where you can sit on your couch, trim a couple pounds, sell it to somebody, and you got money in. No, you got like 1,000 pounds, and you got like workers, and they got to get paid.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks. You got rent, you got packaging costs, you got testing costs. You're covering 20 grand a week sometimes, like no problem. And it's really tough to be able to shoulder all that financial burden and stay up on top of not just your costs, but your payments and your accounts receivable. But then there's all this like security system. Then there's the metric, which is a seed to sale tracking system. Then there's the licensing. We pay like $6,000 a year for licensing. And it's just, it's that you get so overwhelmed with so much stuff that it's really easy for people to miss on performance parameters, right? Well, this last year, there's such an overproduction that the price has translated to the end consumer, where now they're selling $14 ounces to the consumer. Well, where does that come from? That comes from a $200 pound or less. I mean, old weed, you say weed doesn't have a shelf life. Well, it does.
Does it absolutely? I mean,
And it
there's
goes out the
volatile.
window, but there's
Yeah.
ways that you can do it right. And it actually, outdoor specifically, will get better with time. And then it will hit a point where it kind of plateaus for a while. And then, it can drop off, especially if you change a degree, you introduce oxygen, you
Yeah.
sit in the sunlight or any light, like it can just degrade really fast. And, I drove some product to Medford to a wholesale because I didn't have air conditioning in my barn a couple years ago. And just simply by driving it in a trailer and in the heat to the wholesale, I could see it. Like you don't notice it right away because you actually smell it. It's like in your face. You're like, oh yeah,
It's off
isn't it
gassing.
fire? This is
Yeah, it's off
fire.
gassing.
No, dude, it's like, you want that bounce, you want that experience to happen at the consumption. You don't want it to happen anytime through production. So if you're in
Yeah.
production and you like it smells super good, so like literally some of my best stuff and the best done way is literally locked up. It's just like, trust me, it's really good shit. It's just super cold in here, deoxygenized, the whole boat. And so like, it gets really tough when it comes into joints and packaged goods, like it's a really tough thing, but some people are doing it really well. And you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about the co-op, if that's all right now, because this kind of leads well into what we're talking about right now, because a lot of us craft cannabis farmers are struggling with all of the overhead and all of the different performance parameters to hit right and the distribution of your product when compared to and competing against corporate cannabis, because corporate cannabis has this large bankroll. They can hire an HR guy. They can hire this be it bachelor's this of that and sales that, and they have this human resource according to how much funding they have. Well, a craft cannabis business doesn't have that financial resource to invest in all that stuff. And so since I stopped with the cannabis commerce mixer in March 2020, I've really been fenced in. And this whole COVID thing, you know, like COVID didn't exist here on my farm. Like it's gorgeous here. And like, you know, all the news telling me I don't want to leave, you know, but I get stir crazy. Like I want to be involved in my community. I want to help people to accomplish something bigger than any one of us could do on our own. And so last year when we couldn't sell our weed because the wholesalers that we traditionally used now had their own grows and they had all this product and they had to sell their product for this much. So they'll buy yours for this much, which is like a third to half the price, which is like $75. It's like, what? You know, I can't even, you know, and then you know what? People are doing it because they still want $75 rather than zero. So we decided with a couple friends of mine, we decided to start what we would call an owner operator, sun growers, OLCC producer cooperative. This cooperative is called Southern Oregon Family Farms. And what we decided to do is to create a master brand, and each one of us farms bring our own unique skill sets to a greater business. And at first, you know, we really were just set on distributing our products because you had to develop a dispensary direct distribution network. Well, that was a lot tougher than it is to say. And it's pretty tough to say, but it's like a grower is a skill set. A sales team is a completely different skill set. And that's like how so many, and then branding is another one. So why cannabis businesses, specifically craft businesses, are failing and they're being gentrified out of the industry is because they might be good at growing, but are they good at all the other things that are needed to create a working model in this regulated cannabis space? And what we can do is work as a cooperative where we have, you know, each farm has a committee chair position, and there's like 10 different committee chairs all doing different things like packaging, standardization of packaging, marketing, sales. We have this a new thing that we've started doing, which is a grading system. So all of our product is graded. And it used to be where you would bring flower to the market and you're like, is it good? You know, well, now like it goes through a third party where somebody actually is scoring it according to a system that's been well implemented in Washington. And we have policy, we have, you know, all these different areas that are required as a business to have oversight in. And there's like 3 or 4 people in every single committee, yet everybody can still also participate. So now Southern Oregon Family Farms, a group of 15 different owner operator craft cannabis farms, has that human resource to compete with corporate cannabis, but we have the passion and intellect to outperform corporate cannabis. And so, you know, we're actually going live with our LeafLink menu May 1st. So we started it last year. We distributed some of our stuff. It ended up costing us 23% just in mileage driving around the state trying to create sales. A wholesaler costs 20 some percent. So at that time, wholesaler wasn't an option, so we had to do it. But it was a valuable lesson knowing that, you know what, the cooperative is not going to venture into starting our own wholesale yet because it's going to require capital and professionalism to execute really well. But in time, when we want to start a wholesale, you know what, 10 grand for every one of the members. Next thing you know, you have enough financial capital to start your own wholesale. And versus any one farm to do that financially, it takes way too much money.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there. But before we go, let you go, I want to make sure that you let people know where people can check out the co-op, because you were talking about so much business knowledge over the last hour, so I could tell you'd gone to business school, and one of those things that you talked about is the importance of building a brand and building a vision that matter, as you know, and people connect with. So is there a place that people can go and check out your brand, or is that not live yet? I know you
No,
mentioned
yeah,
earlier. Okay,
no,
cool.
that's good to go. It's great that we have so many people part of the co-op. We just haven't launched our menu to dispensaries yet. But so you can go to our website. It's So Family Farms. So SOFamilyFarms.com. And you can go to the Instagram, which is Southern Oregon Family Farms. My personal Instagram is Stallion Genes, like Stallion Genetics, GENES, Stallion Genes, Cannabis Stud Service.
Nice.
Yeah, you can easily find me, find the Cooperative either on the webpage or on Instagram.
Well, you shared so much of your story today. You got into all kinds of different things. The stud service sounds like a interesting. You could have a whole hour on that one on its own. We had questions that were coming in about growing males and stuff like that. But yeah, it was good to chat with you, Aaron. Thank you so much to everyone who's been watching. Of course, we have some shout outs again. Obviously, shout out to our guests. So if you're in the chat, leave some love. And if you're on YouTube right now, leave some comments or thumbs up on the YouTube video. It really helps the algorithm and let people see this video pop up in their screen and all that good stuff. Also, shout out to our live viewers and the live community in CannaBuzz. We will be giving away a pack of seeds right when we end the record button on this one, so stay tuned for that one. If you want to win a pack of seeds, just join us on the next live stream. Our next live show is coming up this Sunday. When you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be coming out, or we'll be streaming live that interview just that same weekend. So if you watch this just in time, we've got Jackson, Farmer Freeman coming up on April 23rd on that Sunday. So make sure to join us there. And then, of course, the sponsors, Terploc. Shout out to Terploc. They're the makers of Grove bags. Like Aaron was saying earlier, they make all kinds of sizes. This is like a couple pounds, I think. And in here, there's like trash bag sizes and all kinds of stuff that they sent me. So if you have some weed and you need to store it in something, check out Grove bags. They've got all sorts of sizes, custom designs, all kinds of stuff. Use code CannaBuzz for 7% off your order. It's definitely worth it. And please use the code so that they know that it's worth it for them to support CannaBuzz. And then, of course, shout out to our friend Tiki over at TikiMadMan.com and TikiSeeds.com. And I loved the name of the strain earlier that you mentioned, the Gary Satan. I love it. Gary Satan. It's a Gary Payton times jealousy. Jealousy is a really tasty strain, so I bet that one would be nice. So check that out over at TikiSeeds.com. Pre-order at 420. All right, thank you so much, Aaron. JR, it's been a good one. Thanks to the CannaBuzz community, everyone on YouTube. Thanks for watching. And as always, support your local grower and
growers love.
Growers love, everyone. Peace.